puts you in the position that God has to speak human language, as opposed to that the revelation is transformed into human language. So if there's revelation and then human language, even if you take a position that's divinely inspired, I'm talking about a correlation between the two, and I want to talk more about that as we go forward. But I'm not taking either a traditional point of view or even a modern yeshiva university. If God didn't say certain things, then what's the authority of me doing it, right? Like, not you're a Reformed Jew, right? So right. Kind of a silly statement.
Right.
But the issue, even the Rambam has this notion. Let's say if revelation is also the cultivation of your intellect, which is God-given, then you bring your intellect to the highest point of awareness, and you know what's required on the basis of the traditions that have come down to formulate a rule that would be good for the community. Well, that's sort of human, isn't it, and divine?
Right. And would it entail?
I wouldn't take that position because they don't have that same theological ontology, but that kind of language. So the real question is, does God speak human words?
Right.
Ultimately, and I don't believe that, so I don't get Mafta Yonah.
Right. So the question is it a theological belief that God does not speak in human words?
It doesn't. I couldn't live a theological life. I don't have a sense of God like that.
God couldn't speak human
He could, probably he could.
Right.
If God is all powerful, of course he can. He speaks 70 languages, right? Simultaneously.
Does that detract scripture?
Right? That makes the hermeneutical task of Moses even more astonishing.
Right.
Can you then discount the scripture?
What do you mean?
We're trying to understand what Scripture was saying. When it says, look, even if you take the text from the Mechilta, where it says you have statements that of God and Moses mirroring each other's sound, right?
Explain this.
Well, I don't want to go into the whole thing, but when Ve'elohim yanenu b'kol, right? So Moses is speaking, and there is a tradition that God's voice is projecting that outward, but you could understand that it's transforming the human voice into a divine voice. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you could read that, right?
Right.
And
it's a question of what kind of courage and where you want to stand. But I think also part of the theology is like what I can believe, right? It's not what you can preach on Shabbos to your community. That's very different. You want to teach them how to
live ethical.
How to continue the tradition, right? I remember Altman, one of my teachers, who was the chief rabbi in Manchester, and he said the task of the rabbi in synagogue is to keep the people in the synagogue, keep the Masorah going, and give them understanding of how to live that Masorah.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the place for the deeper theological questions. Right. It's to support their life as Jews, rightly so. But that's not the whole
picture.
That's not the end,
of course. And I don't mean this in any way as an inquisition. I'm just trying to think openly through these things.
I understand.
Look,
I'm coming from things that are not part of the yeshiva world that you're a part of, right? So.
Right. And I'm just thinking through them. What does this have to impact the question of history, or what you might call myth history in your book? Does this mean that Moses is sitting in a cave translating these revelations, or
Moses goes into a cloud? So what is the?
But we're still talking about Sinai and a thunder and a lightning, but just the language is the question.
Right. What's happening? How do you understand that moment that God speaks through Moses? He speaks through Moses. Moses is talking, right? So how do you understand that so if you understand it in pure literalism, God bless. But if you can't understand it as a pure literalism, what does that mean? I mean, the tradition is so huge in the Zohar at different levels of kolot and depending on different levels of consciousness, because they kept thinking about it. It's not as if it's a simple answer. It's simple for the simple-minded.
Right. But I mean, this is already less controversial
Right.
because we're not talking about changing of religious history. We're just talking about how
No.
we view those moments.
Right, I'm trying to put
Right.
this into a hermeneutical context. But again, you have to be careful who you say it,
Of course.
because people live at different levels, and you as a Rav have to teach at a different level than we can talk in a different sense, right?
Yeah.
And I have a different freedom because I am not responsible to anybody but Kodesh Baruch Hu.
It's true. Already, I remember once I gave a...
And my children, right?
Right. I gave a drasha once about Noah's Ark and used it as a metaphor for something, and somebody in the audience already came and said, well, hold on, you're saying it was a metaphor? It didn't really happen? So it already caused a stir, just even talking metaphorically.
So you have to figure out, you have to know who you're talking to.
Right.
If you're going to teach Torah, then you have to talk Torah to the
People.
kahal that you're talking to.
Right.
Or else you're going to lose them. So I mean, the point is, that's not the point of hermeneutical education, that's the point of instruction.
Right.
All right, I want
Okay.
to, because I got a doctor's